Joni Lamb lived her life wide open. She loved deeply, and when she lost, she grieved in a way that would break most people. But she didn't stay down. Somehow she found her way back to happiness, and then, just when it felt like she was hitting her stride again, she was gone far too soon. If you've ever flipped on the TV during a quiet morning, maybe while making coffee or folding laundry, and caught a woman at a round table, smiling, laughing, talking with pastors or musicians about faith and real life and what it means to be human in all its messy glory, there's a good shot you watched Joni Lamb. She was the co-founder and president of Daystar television network. Not just a local station, one of the biggest Christian networks in the world. On May 7, 2026, at just 65, she died. Way too early, no matter how you look at it. Honestly, her life story doesn't fit in a neat little box. It's complicated, full of joy and pain, soaring highs and heartbreaks that would make most of us stumble. But if you're going to know her for anything, know her for how much she cared and how fiercely she kept going. So, let's rewind. Joni Trammell arrived in Texas on July 19, 1960, and grew up tucked away in Greenville, South Carolina. Church wasn't just an event you dressed up for every Sunday in her family. Faith was as ordinary and necessary as breathing. They belonged to Tremont Avenue Church of God, and the place shaped her from the ground up. Music, community, the whole rhythm of church life. That church is where she first glimpsed Marcus Lamb, a visiting preacher leading a revival. Picture it, a packed sanctuary, everyone sweating and singing and praying under bright lights and hopeful hearts. Two young people both chasing something bigger than themselves, their paths colliding by pure chance, or maybe something more. It sounds like something from a Southern novel, but it was real. That night was the start of everything. Marcus was only in town to preach. Instead, he changed Joni's life forever. They met, fell in love, fast and fiercely, and 2 years later in 1982, married when Joni was just 21. It wasn't glamorous. No big headquarters, no bright studio lights. Just two young evangelists with a used car and a message, rolling from one little church to another, talking to anyone willing to listen. The work was hard and thankless, but it laid the groundwork for everything that came next. Their first leap came in 1984, when they bought a struggling TV station in Montgomery, Alabama, a little foothold in the world of broadcasting. They started small, Christian shows, Bible lessons, some music. Slowly, people tuned in. They saw something real, and the Lambs dared to dream bigger. By 1990, Marcus and Joni moved to Dallas, chasing a vision that was too big for Alabama. And eventually, in the mid-90s, nobody agrees on the exact year because these things never happen all at once, the dream became real. The Daystar television network. From there, Daystar just exploded. It didn't stay a tiny local channel, it went global, satellite, cable, online, pretty much any way you could reach people. At its peak, Daystar landed in hundreds of millions of homes around the world, places far from Greenville or Montgomery or Dallas. Two evangelists in a car had built something worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not just a good story, it's almost impossible to believe. But here's the real truth. Joni wasn't just there smiling in the background, letting Marcus take the spotlight. She was all in, heart and soul, the co-founder, the president, calling shots, building teams, hosting her daily talk show, Joni Table Talk. That show was the beating heart of Daystar. Every weekday, she gathered ministers, musicians, best-selling authors, and ordinary folks from all walks of life around her table. They talked about faith, yes, but also messy relationships, cultural puzzles, those big, scary questions that keep you awake at night. Joni's table wasn't some cold, churchy affair with rigid rules. It was honest, sometimes loud, sometimes vulnerable, warm and real in a way TV rarely is. She had a knack for making guests instantly comfortable, like they were leaning in over coffee in your own kitchen. She didn't dodge the hard stuff either. The show took on big controversies and awkward, dare-to-go-there topics so many Christian shows avoid. It got so buzzy that eventually networks like ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and Lifetime started carrying it. Think about it, a faith-based talk show airing right beside primetime dramas. In 2012, Joni Table Talk snagged a Daytime Emmy nomination. Picture that. churches all over America holding watch parties for a Christian talk show on Emmy night. How often does that happen? But she didn't stop at television. Joni sang too, with the Daystar singers and band. She wrote 2 books, Surrender All, about finding peace and purpose, and Through the Storm, released in 2024. Her raw, revealing account of what it takes to survive life's hardest blows. The second one reads almost like a personal letter. It's about resilience, faith, and triumph. But it's also about the nights she had nothing left but prayer. Because, let's be real, there were plenty of storms. Joni and Marcus, side by side, ran Daystar for decades, raised their 3 kids under bright studio lights, traveled the world speaking and singing and ministering. Their family wasn't just their private life. It became part of the Daystar brand. Their son Jonathan hosted his own show. Rachel, their daughter, ran marketing and hosted too. Rebecca, their youngest, started a podcast. The Lambs were Daystar, and Daystar was theirs. But in 2010, everything shook. Marcus stood before the world and confessed to an affair, not quietly but on air, in front of millions. Can you imagine the pain, the humiliation? This was a family ministry, watched by people who believed in faithfulness and healing. And suddenly, it was real-life pain broadcast everywhere. Plenty of people would have left. Joni stayed. She didn't rush forgiveness either. She worked for it, lived through the mess, and talked openly about what it really means to forgive, and how much work it takes to rebuild trust, especially when the whole world's watching. And she kept going. For a full decade after that blow, she showed up day after day, leading Daystar, raising her kids, talking with guests, championing the hard conversations, and choosing to love fiercely, even in the middle of her private battles. Joni Lamb's story is messy, complicated, and unforgettable. She's proof that a single life can ripple across the globe, right from a little church in South Carolina, straight into your own living room. And the best stories, the ones that really matter, are never simple. They're lived in, full of sharp edges and deep love, and Joni's life was all of that and more. November 2021 changed everything. Marcus Lamb, Joni's husband of nearly 4 decades, her partner in every sense, the man she met at a church revival as a teenager, caught COVID-19. He passed away at 64. If you know anything about Christian media, you probably caught the headlines. Marcus was vocal on air, using Daystar's platform to push back against vaccines and promote alternatives, putting him right in the spotlight as the pandemic raged on. And when he died from COVID, the news was everywhere. It sparked a firestorm of questions and public criticism. Joni didn't just have to grieve her husband, she had to do it while the world watched, all the while shouldering a kind of scrutiny most of us couldn't imagine. But she didn't vanish. She didn't pause Daystar or slip out of view. Joni stepped directly into the enormous gap Marcus left. She became Daystar's sole president. She stayed on air with Joni Table Talk 5 days a week, speaking straight to viewers about grief, about faith, about that hollowed-out feeling of losing not just your love, but your closest collaborator and friend. She wasn't shy about the pain. She talked about how the house seemed to echo with quiet, and how the loss felt like a ripping out of her entire adult life. It wasn't just her husband, he'd been her business partner, co-host, and confidant, all rolled into one. But in the midst of that devastation, Joni mentioned something different, a bit of light. Marcus, before he died, had told her openly, in front of their kids, "Sweetheart, if anything ever happened to me, I would want you to get remarried. I don't want you to be alone." He meant it. So, less than a year later, something neither expected nor planned arrived. Joni met Dr. Doug Weiss, a Christian psychologist and author who'd actually been a guest on Daystar before. Somehow, through the fog of that sorrow-soaked year, she and Doug connected. And if you ask Joni, what happened next was miraculous. She described meeting Doug as a refreshing rain saturating the drought in my soul, bringing a sense of newness. She told Charisma magazine she always believed Marcus would be happiest for her. She saw Doug as an unexpected gift, the missing piece she hadn't realized she needed. You read her words, and there's just no way around the feeling, a kind of gasp, a reminder that redemption doesn't always look the way we expect. On June 10, 2023, Joni married Doug. He joined her on Daystar, co-hosting shows, but more importantly, becoming her daily anchor. She called him a rock. When their anniversary rolled around, she posted that he'd brought so much joy and happiness into her life. By every account, she looked genuinely happy again. A happiness so unexpected after such loss. A happiness some people thought was out of reach after a certain age. But not everyone cheered. Her son, Jonathan, who'd worked at Daystar for years, wasn't just unsure about the timing. In 2024, Jonathan and his wife Susie didn't just express doubts. They brought public allegations of abuse involving another family member, claiming there'd been a cover-up. Things unraveled. Jonathan lost his position at Daystar. Board meeting recordings leaked. Major public figures, like Joyce Meyer, began putting distance between themselves and the network. The fight went public. Raw, confusing, painful. The sort of family mess that most of us are grateful isn't spotlighted for the world. Still, when Joni passed, Jonathan and Susie posted a tribute. There was a photo, just them and Joni, everybody laughing, a snapshot from happier days. They called for prayers. Under everything that had happened, there was still a son mourning his mom. A family, messy as any, with love always tangled up in the grief. I can't think of anything more deeply human than that. In her last months, Joni's health quietly slipped. She didn't go public. Complaining was never her style. She moved forward, always focused on faith, not self-pity or drama. When a back injury hit, her health spiraled. These cascading medical crises, they always seem to snowball when you're already fighting a hidden battle. Her condition got worse, and it happened fast. On May 7, 2026, Joni Lamb died at home in Bedford, Texas. She was 65. Daystar's official announcement carried the weight of heartbreak, framing her passing as a graduation to heaven, picturing her reunited with Marcus, and receiving her reward for a beautiful life lived in surrender to the Lord. Reunited with Marcus, whether or not you buy into the language of heaven, that hits somewhere gentle and profound. Something about it just lands, doesn't it? Doug confirmed her death simply. She was deeply loved, and the space she leaves behind is impossible to put into words. Pastors, friends, fans, they all flooded in with memories and tributes. Pastor Travis Johnson, for example, posted that her life, love for Jesus, and passion to share the gospel reached and impacted the world. Longtime viewers of Joni Table Talk talked about how her honesty and warmth gave them courage, how her voice became the one they trusted in their hardest times. Because when it comes down to it, Joni's legacy runs deeper than a TV network, or industry awards, or the sheer scale of her media reach. Her real gift was always the way she made people feel. Like faith didn't mean faking it. She showed that you could adore God and still face the hardest human pain. You could build something extraordinary, survive heartbreak and controversy, and still let yourself be seen, mistakes and all. You could lose the person you thought you couldn't live without and still, somehow, open the door to joy again. Joni leaves behind Doug, 3 children, Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca, their spouses, and 7 grandchildren. She carved out a space in this world that will ripple through her family and her network, that will last far beyond her years. Those grandchildren will grow up hearing stories about a grandmother who never let anything, not tragedy or public storms, or private heartbreak, keep her from showing up. Joni was so many things: a broadcaster, a builder, a singer, a writer, a leader, a wife, a mother, a grandmother. She lived fiercely. She grieved without hiding it. She got back up, again and again. She found new love and ran a media empire, somehow holding hope and hard truth together, never losing hold of her faith, even when it was threatened to the core. One thing she did quietly, without drama or big announcements, almost slipped by in the bigger story. She made sure Daystar would go on. She set up an executive team and put plans in place for the work to continue. She cared about the mission more than the spotlight. That says everything you need to know about her heart. People always talk about legacy, about whether their life will matter once they're gone. Joni Lamb spent her first years in a little South Carolina church with nothing but faith and the man she loved. She leaves behind a network that reaches the globe, A family marked by both pain and persistence, and millions of people who feel like they didn't just lose a broadcaster, they lost a friend. That's a life that means something. That's a legacy that lingers.